All right, ladies and gentlemen, Baron here. So yeah, the patch 1.59 hype train is choo-chooing along the track. There's going to be a spam of dev blogs this week and next. So one could hope or imagine that kind of how they did 1.57, there was this slew of dev blogs directly prior to the patch going out. Dev servers, I remember in the old days, like I've been doing this stuff since patch 1.27. And like they've changed up the way they've done it, because back then you'd have dev blogs and then it would be a little bit of time, maybe another 1 or 2 weeks before the patch would be dropped. Now, or excuse me, the dev server, dev servers would go up, then about 1-2 weeks later they would release the patch, or so my memory serves me. And then now it's kind of like they put a lot of dev blogs out. They'll put out a dev server just for maybe one instance of the dev server, or maybe 2, and then usually right after that the patch would get dropped. So if you guys have, like, a lot of people obviously have been studying the way in which, you know, when patches come out, how they do it, all that kind of stuff. So with all those things considered, it seems like we're maybe 2 weeks away from a patch 1.59, which is pretty big. It's hard to think of, like, would you say this is the biggest patch? I mean, obviously the tanks was the biggest patch I think I've ever seen. Granted, it kind of went into closed beta test first, so it was kind of a long process there. But what we're looking at right now is the Panzer 3B. This was a dev blog post. This thing's pretty damn cute. It's the Reichling, I'm going to call it, the little Reich tank. Like, look at that! Look at all the machine guns. It's got one hull mounted and then 2 turret mounted machine guns. You could almost say coaxially mounted twin machine guns. So it's got 3 machine guns, and it's gonna have a very low BR, right? So let's read what the dev blog has to say. Back in the 1920s, Germany had started to develop new tanks for a possible future war. Officially, they were prohibited from putting such vehicles into service. However, the Panzer I was put into mass production in 1934. It was the first modern German tank with machine gun armament and bulletproof armor. Ooh, how novel of an idea. Though the development of such a vehicle was successful, German military command understood that the country needed heavier machines, like the Maus. That is how the first Panzerkampfwagen II and 3 were created. So the Panzerkampfwagen 3 design had requirements of a 37mm gun, how cute is that, mounted in a rotating turret, a 250 to 300 horsepower engine, and a maximum speed of at least 40 kilometers per hour. I'm assuming that would be on the road and not in... Look at how thin those tracks are. This thing is not going to enjoy soft sand or snow. The order for the first 25 vehicles for military testing was placed in December of 1935. The tanks were supposed to be put into service in spring of 1936 with, you know, Poland and Czechoslovakia and Denmark on their minds, right? The Panzerkampfwagen 3A was a modification based on the prototype and did not meet all the requirements. The vehicle's speed did not exceed 35 kilometers per hour, mostly because of a poorly engineered chassis. The lower track wheels, 5 on each side, had a large diameter and individual suspension. The next modification, the Panzer III Ausführung B, had smaller track wheels that were grouped in bogies. These vehicles were put into service at the end of 1937. So the Panzer IIIB will soon be introduced as a reserve tank. So reserve means a battle rating of 1, and it will be the first modification in the Panzer III branch, and will smooth, quotations, the BR difference for early German tanks, making it easier for new players. Interestingly enough, the tank had lighter armor and less weight than the Panzer IIIe that we already have in the game, but it has the same armament. So we have that bad boy in the game, or we have the Panzer IIIe, but we have, which is battle rating 2.0. And this one's going to be 1.0, so you could almost make the argument that maybe the Panzer IIIe could be dropped down to, what, a 1.7 maybe? I don't think you'd want 1.3, but I think 1.7. But that's the issue right now, I think, with War Thunder in general, is like, BRs, I think the real issue with that is I think in concept, the battle rating idea is pretty good. And the whole reason with compression and all that stuff is like just, I think it has to do with player-based numbers. And there's certain times of the day when there's just not enough players, and you can find some interesting BR matchups or longer queue times and stuff like that. So we've seen the ASU 57. We know the ASU 85 is coming. And then we've got a whole lot of new stuff with ATGMs being added. Patch 1.59 should be crazy, and there's going to be a rush of dev blogs, one every 1 to 2 days. So this was from yesterday. There's likely to be one tomorrow. Now, I also wanted to talk about tomorrow with regards to Warhammer Total War, and we'll get to that a little bit. But right now, there's a lot of stuff being added. Still no Japanese tanks. I don't think the French tree is coming out anytime soon. We know that we're going to get the Sturder Emile, which is Tier 4 tank destroyer. And it's going to have similar gun depression of the Dicker Max with that giant barrel, so you're going to be able to, like, be an anteater and snort up the grass as you run. And it's going to have the most powerful gun in the game with the energy of the shot, with regards to the energy of the shot, or joules, is what was confirmed by one of the developers on the Russian forums. And 128 millimeters, 60 calibers long. And it was going to be faster. The Sturra Emile is going to be faster than the Dicker Max. Now, I put out a video on Men of War Assault Squad where, because I don't have any dev servers, I don't have any exclusive footage or anything yet with regards to that vehicle. We don't even have a dev blog on that. So I figured, hell, I'm going to put this thing into Men of War. And instead of Men of War Mondays, we had Men of War Sturra Emile Tuesdays, which was a lot of fun. That thing is a beast, and it tore up some American tanks. Now, we know that the TU4 is likely to come out this patch because they talked about it and said that they're going to have a dev blog. The T62 is a work in progress. Navy's under non-disclosure agreements. There's just a lot of stuff. The M551 Sheridan has been confirmed, and we do have screenshots of that. Like, that is also like the Sturra Emile, where we have screenshots, but we don't have the dev blog postings yet. We know that there's the IT-1 with the ATGMs coming out. So we know that the Sheridan's going to be the American ATGM, and the IT-1 is going to be the Soviet anti-tank guided missile launcher. So we still have the Brits and the Germans that will need anti-tank guided missiles, some kind of vehicle for that. I think there was like kind of like the Jagdpanzer 4-5, like that, style of chassis and casemate style tank destroyer. I'm pretty sure that the Germans had something like that fired a guided missile. I still don't think the anti-tank guided missiles are needed at this point in the game. And I think there's a lot of people in the community that feel that while they're cool and interesting, it's just the wrong time to put them in. Now, that being said, I'm definitely going to play them, and because I want to see how they play. I want to see if they're imbalanced, if they're kind of underpowered, if it's a really cool concept and adds a lot to it in terms of like tactical envelopment and immersion, like feeling like a tank like bunker down, and there's someone over there firing guided missiles. Like, I don't know how that's going to be. I can't imagine. I think at this point in the game, like, I'm not really sure if it's the ideal time to put it in. But there's still no German, heavy bomber. And I still think that one of the next patches should be a Bomber 2.0, where they really kind of develop that, especially with regards to the upcoming, soon, trademarked of course, World War mode. Because bombing is going to be very, very important, I think, for the World War mode. It should be. If it's not, it should be. And it needs to be for the World War mode to really kind of work properly. Like, we've got all these gorgeous bombers and attacker planes and stuff like that, and now you just need to be incentivized to use them and use them properly, and there's so many ways in which that can happen. So this is going to be a very interesting patch. For the most part, it seems like a vehicle patch, and the theme of it really seems to be the anti-tank guided missiles. That's the biggest thing. In the past we've had some cool stuff, like we had the Dornier 335, which was really hyped, and it was one of those vehicles that just disappeared. it was a hype vehicle, and then it just died out. How many of you have it and still play it and use it regularly, right? And I'm not to say like it's a bad plane. It just kind of didn't live up to the hype that was surrounding it. And I think like that's one of the things that can affect the game long term, is when you build up so much hype for something. And trust me, I was hyped for it too. I thought it was, really, really great, right? And then I played it a few times and I'm like, okay, that was interesting. Now I'm going to go back to doing, what I was going to do, right? And there's some other things that they've talked about, some interesting weapon systems. Like we have no recoilless rifles in the game right now, or, any of those kinds of weapon systems. Like imagine the Ontos, the M50 Ontos. Was mentioned. There was a question. But the direct quote from the developer was that I won't tell any information about that right now. So there's no understanding of whether that's coming. I think armored cars would be a very good patch. I think armored cars would be a great patch. Bomber 2.0, obviously the World War patch, and then the French tree. I think if you were to line those up in any order and release those as the next 4 patches, you would do very well for yourself, like for Gaijin. I think the community wants that. Obviously, with continued adjustments of battle ratings and stuff like that, we definitely would need that as well. So I thought this little Panzer III was pretty dang cute. We'll see how it is as a reserve tier battle rating 1.0 tank. It should be pretty fun to use. Honestly, I'm one of those people that, while I enjoy the competitiveness of the high tier and mid tier battles, it's fun to go down to the lower tiers every now and then, where it's just like absolute chaos normally. And it can be really fun and a lot less, what would you say, stressful maybe, if you wanted to use that word, than the higher tier stuff. So, I mean, there's lots of stuff. And that's where really like armored cars would make things pretty interesting. Like imagine driving around a Puma, which would probably be in the 2 to 3 battle rating type thing. Like that kind of speed of that is at least on the road, and then that 50 mil cannon. All right, so I would imagine that'd be like mid 2.3, 2.7, something like that. Yeah, not really battle rating 3, but armored cars would be cool. We got the T-17, and that thing just tore shit up when that first came out. But yeah, lots of stuff, man. Lots of stuff, some scary stuff, but it's almost like there's this jump to that next level. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna work on the maybe IS-6, maybe T-62. We're gonna have anti-tank guided missiles, and it's like, man, we don't even have a French tree yet. We don't have Italians. Like Italian planes were talked about. I remember like back in patch 1.29 when I really started following, patch development. As like there was talk of Italian planes, there's some amazing Italian planes out there, and then early to mid-tier French tanks are gonna be pretty well. Like early tier French tanks are amazing, right? And then there's a lot of really good French planes out too. So it's like, what is that? Like, I mean, that's why I literally had the Charby 1 custom made into War Thunder, because like it's just about time we had that thing. So it's gonna be interesting. Shilka, Gepard, and Vulcan coming out. Warhammer Total War will be out tomorrow. That's a game that I'm really enjoying and really liking. I think I'm going to devote my second channel to kind of Total War and then more Men of War stuff. So if you guys have thoughts or opinions on that, I'm going to put out occasional stuff on the main channel, but I understand that, this channel has a theme of its own. And I've stopped playing Fallout 4. And I really think, like, I love those kinds of games, Men of War and Total War games. And, like, I feel like that's definitely a good spot for it is on the second channel. So make sure to subscribe to that if you're interested in those games. Anyway, that was the Panzer III Ausführung B with its cute little 37mm and 3 machine guns. I'm not sure if all 3 of them work, but I imagine they would, because that's kind of how War Thunder does it. Still no AI infantry to shoot at, but there's plenty of planes. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for watching. And there's going to be a lot more updates in the coming days and weeks, so stay tuned, and I'll see you soon.